Hi, I'm Judith Patterson. I'm a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator in Texas. And today I'm going to show you how to make a card, this card, using Stampin' Up's Sweet as a Peach stamp set. In fact, we're using a lot of the Sweet. So we're going to use the Sweet as a Peach stamps, the Euro Peach Designer Series paper, and a few of the peach dies. Now, the dies don't come from Stampin' Up! Like this. They do come in a plastic envelope that closes, and it has all of the important information in a sleeve and that. But I like to, whenever I get my stamps, I like to move them over to a magnetic sheet, or not my stamps, but my dies. I like to move them over to a magnetic sheet and put them in these clear envelopes just so I can flip through and see what I've got whenever I'm ready to create something. So real quick before we get started, I wanted to let you know that Sweet as a Peach has turned out to be one of my favorite sweets. I love the stamps, the dies, the paper. I love the colors in the paper. I just love everything about it. It kind of surprised me. I knew I'd like it, but I didn't know how much I would like it. So I've made a few cards now using this sweet. And if you go over to my blog, on the right-hand side of my blog, there's a column of just all kinds of things. And so at the top, there's the host code. And then under that, there's the Paper Pumpkin subscription box. But then below that, it says search this blog. So you can see it there on the screen. So if you put in a stamp name or the name of dies, a die set, then it will pull up all of my blog posts with that stamp set or that die set, so that you can see some of the past cards that I've made with that set. So I've been blogging for almost a year now, and I just realized that within the last month or two. So I thought I would share that with you just in case you didn't know it, because I have found that to be quite a handy feature to be able to look up older cards that I've done. So let's go ahead and switch the camera around and we'll get started stamping. So I'm using basic gray as my card base this time, and I'm just going to grab my bone folder and go ahead and score this. This is cut 5.5 inches by 8.5 inches, and then I scored it at 4.25 inches. I just like to use the bone folder to get a nice crease there on the edge of the card. So we have both of these sheets are from the Euro Peach 12 by 12 paper, Designer Series paper, and they are, all the paper in that is double-sided, which is nice. This strip I'm going to add to the inside of the card later, so we'll set that aside. So I have two pieces that are 3 inches by 3.5 inches, and two pieces that are 2.5 by 2.25 inches. Yours don't have to be exactly that size. I was just grabbing out of my little stash of basic white scraps over here whenever I grabbed those. But you do need them to be close to that for the stamps that we're using today. So we're using the leaves and the flowers and the happy birthday. I also, speaking of happy birthday, have a 3/4 inch by 2 3/4 inch piece of Pear Pizzazz cardstock that we'll be stamping the happy birthday on. And I have the shimmer ribbon in gray granite, and from the Flowers for Every Season ribbon set, I just have this wide white linen ribbon. The colors we're using are Pear Pizzazz, Calypso Coral, and Balmy Blue. I also have my Banners Pick-a-Punch. If you're only going to have one punch, I'll tell you what, this is a really great one to have because it does 3 different sizes and 2 different punches. And you can punch one end, you can punch both ends, but this is probably my favorite punch. I use it all the time. We're also using the stockings dies. We're just going to use this one stocking here. If you don't have it, that's okay. You can just do a rectangle cutout instead of pocket type. And I'm using the mini Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine. So both of these die sets, the peach dies and the stockings dies, they work with this mini Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine, as long as the paper that you're cutting is not wider than 3.5 inches. So if it's wider than 3.5 inches, you're going to want to go ahead and get the regular size Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine. But as long as you're just cutting pieces like we are today, you're golden. You don't need to have the big one. All of the dies in both of these sets work with this mini Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine, as long as the cardstock that you're cutting works with this Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine. So as my dad said, was that as clear as mud? He says that all the time. So if you need, if ever I say anything that is confusing or just not very clear, let me know and I will try to clear it up for you. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to stamp is, with a pair of pizzazz, we're going to stamp the leaves. And I know this looks like a huge block for these leaves, but in order to have them stamped correctly so that we can use this die over them later, they do need a little bit more space than just a C or a D block offers. So this is actually an E block. I'm going to grab my pizzazz. I've been stamping a really long time, y'all, so some of my ink pads are pretty old, but that's okay. I just keep re-inking them and keep using them. Okay, so as you stamp, make sure that you're putting even pressure over all the parts of the stamp. Okay, we're going to set that aside. Close up my pair of pizzazz and open up the balmy blue. Grab those flowers. Stamp them. So I want you to, let's see if I can show this to you. So while this is still wet, it looks pretty splotchy and kind of weird, but they always look like that. And as they dry, the ink lightens up a little bit and it just has a more pleasing stamp, I guess. I don't know. I just think once it dries, it looks really great. But sometimes when I first stamp it, I look at it and I think, is that how that's supposed to look? Maybe it's just me. I don't know. Okay, so we're going to grab the Calypso Coral now. And that little strip of Pear Pizzazz cardstock, there it is. It was hiding from me. So I'm going to ink up my happy birthday. And when I stamp this one, I'm going to get closer to the right edge than the left edge because I am going to be putting it in that Banner's Pick-a-Punch, and I don't want to punch my my word that I'm stamping. I'd have to start all over if I did that. Okay. So hopefully that's on there fairly straight. Not too shabby. Okay, and that is it for our stamping. That's everything that we needed to stamp. So I'm going to pull out that die machine, the Stampin' Cut and Emboss Machine Mini, and I'm getting my plate 1 and both of plate number 2. I'm going to start with the leaves. And I am going to use just a little piece of washi tape. It's not necessary. I just feel like it keeps my die from moving around whenever I run it through the Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine. Okay, so now I'm going to put this plate on top. I'm going to do it again with the other leaves that we cut out or stamped. And I'm just taking my time trying to get it centered up pretty evenly. I'm going to grab the flowers. So I've started keeping just this small little dish on my desk whenever I'm stamping. It just pretty much stays here all the time now because I can put little pieces in it as I'm stamping because I have a habit. If you've seen some of my other videos, I tend to lose things that are tiny. And it can be a little frustrating. So I just keep that small dish very handy. And as I cut out little things like these flowers, I will put them inside the dish to keep handy for when I need to put them on my card in a little while. Card does not take a super long time to put together, but that doesn't mean I won't lose my little flowers if I don't keep them contained. And you can tell I'm just using the same piece of washi tape over and over. One piece should last quite some time. And I don't use it on every die. I'm not going to use it on the next one. Okay, so I'm going to grab the stockings dies. So here's a little tip. If you do take your dies out of the container that they come in, I always write down the number of dies that are in, it is just not going to clear up, is it? That are in this set. So there are 22 dies in the stockings dies. It's not going to clear up enough for you to see it. That is such a cute bundle too. All right, here we go. We're going to use this one. Now we are finished with the Stamp, Cut, and Emboss machine. I'm just going to put all this stuff up. Close this. I love this little machine because it stores right here on my desk. It's always handy. All right. So now we're going to take that Pick-a-Punch and this piece. So when I'm punching, I always turn my punch upside down. And I always double check to make sure I'm punching the right punch. When you've got two like this, you want to make sure you're using the right one. So this shows what your cardstock is going to look like after you cut it out. It'll either be half an inch wide or 3/4 of an inch wide or an inch wide, depending how wide your cardstock is that you cut. So ours will be 3/4 of an inch. So it's going to stop here. and it's going to have this type of end on it. So I'm going to turn it upside down to make sure I'm not stamping over my, and I cut mine a little wide so it's not fitting. There it is. Okay, so by turning it upside down, I can punch easier. I keep realizing that I'm not in the picture there, but so I can see what I'm punching. I can make sure I'm not punching the word that I cut or stamped, and I can make sure that my cardstock is centered up pretty good in there and not going to come out all crooked. And there we go. There's our happy birthday. Okay, so now I'm going to grab this, and I need 3 inches of each of these ribbons. And I do recommend having scissors that are specifically for your ribbons. I don't use my paper snips for ribbon. I use those only for paper. Speaking of paper, this grid paper that I'm using has so many benefits to it, but did you see how I just came over and measured my ribbon just lickety split? So I didn't have to pull out an extra ruler or anything. I always love that about this. All right, so it's already time to start putting this great card together. All right, so let's start by gluing down this longer sheet of Designer Series paper. This is 2 1/4 inches by 5 1/2 inches. Just want to make sure it's straight against the top and the bottom. Okay, then I'm going to grab this one. This looks like a really long pocket to me. I'm going to put it right about here. Okay, so then I'm going to grab my leaves. And I'm going to put them just like that. Always helps me to figure out placement before I start adding adhesive. Otherwise, I can end up with quite a mess and adhesive everywhere, especially when I'm using this liquid glue. The great part of this card, though, is if you do get glue somewhere you really don't want it, you can use one of those flowers and just cover it right up. Flowers don't have to go exactly where I put them. You can put them wherever you want. Okay, so I'm putting the Stampin' Dimensionals. I'm using 3, and I'm putting them towards the top of this card because I put this down before I put down the ribbon. So I'm going to have to slide that ribbon under that. But that way I can get, because what I want is where these 2 stems have lined up, I want this to cover that, but just barely, because I don't want this super high on my card. Just enough. Okay, so there's that. Now I'm going to grab my glue dots and my take your pick tool. So this is double-sided. one side is like the sticky putty stuff. Just dropped that. And then this side is pointy, but it also can pop out. It kind of twists out. And then it has like a little spatula end on the other end. It's just not going to focus where I want it to focus. So I'm using the pointy end. And I'm going to, so this, I don't know why I turned my ribbon over. It's the same on both ends. I like attaching my ribbon with glue dots. So I'm adding 3 glue dots on the back of this ribbon. And I don't know why I'm doing it this way, because it's so much easier to just grab your ribbon. And can you see what I'm doing here? So there's a glue dot under my finger. So I'm putting the ribbon right on it, mashing it down, and just pulling it up. So much better. Okay, so now I'm putting the gray ribbon, centering it, well, trying to get it centered side to side, but I'm putting it towards the top of this white ribbon. Can you see that? Let's see if it'll. There you go. Now you can see. So I didn't actually center it side to side, but that's okay because we can always cut some off the ends. Don't put your glue dot on the very end of your ribbon. Instead, put it like in the center and in a little bit on either edge. That way, if you need to trim a little, you can. So I'm going to do the same again. I'm going to stick my ribbon on my glue dot and pull it off. And again. And again. Then I'm just going to take this and tuck it up under that banner that we put down. And yeah, so I cut this 3 inches so that I would have a little bit of wiggle room. So now I'm taking those scissors that I said I only use on ribbon. If I sewed, I'd probably use them on cloth, but I'm just not a seamstress. My favorite thing about Stampin' Up! Is that everything coordinates, and I look like a crafty person because I can put it all together. But I'm really not very crafty. I like to pretend I'm very crafty. Okay, there we go. So now I'm going to grab those little flowers that I set in my bowl earlier. And then I'm going to get my dimensionals again. So on the back of each of these, 5 of these flowers, and it doesn't matter what 5. I'll probably grab the bigger 4 and then one of the smaller ones, but it really doesn't matter. Then just going to stick them down. And I do want one of the bigger ones to overlap my banner here. And then I'm going to have my other big one overlapping my ribbon. And see, you can tell I didn't attach the leaves the same way. This one I actually, oh, maybe you can't tell if I don't have it under the camera. This one I actually cut some of it off and squished it up and did some weird things there. But this one you saw I just lined up the 2 ends, and I really like the way that turned out. And I did get a little bit of glue right here, so I am covering that with a flower and a dimensional. I'm going to move this just a little bit so it's not too close to that other flower. I'm going to grab this one, put it here, and I'm going to grab this one and put it here. Okay, so recently I found a really old set of pearls. Oh, look, this is so old. We don't do green anymore, but they still work. So I'm still going to use them. So I'm just going to grab these smaller pearls and put one in the center of each of these flowers. I love that Stampin' Up! Still has these pearls because they are one of my favorite ways to add a little bit of bling, a little bit of something special to a card. They're not super fancy, but I think they fancy things up a little bit. Okay, so there's our card. And for the inside, I forgot to cut my cardstock for the inside, I think. Sure did. Okay, so I'm going to pull out my paper trimmer. And I'm going to pull out just a sheet of basic white cardstock. So usually I have a stack of these on my desk ready to go for the inside of cards. But I have been creating a lot of cards lately, and I have not been replenishing my pile of inserts. So I guess I need to work on that this week. All right, so this is 4 inches by 5 1/4 inches. And what I'm going to do is that strip we had earlier, this was just left over from me cutting this cardstock to use in all kinds of card projects. And I didn't want to throw it away. So I think I cut like 1/2 inch off the end of it. So I'm putting that on my card, or my basic white. And then I'm going to just put this on the inside of the card. I need to throw all my backings away from my dimensionals. They're everywhere. Okay, so for this card, what I did was I took that extra flower and I just added it to the corner. And I always like to put the basic white on the inside because it gives you a nice crisp area to write on. Of course, if you have gel pens or you're using a lighter cardstock, you don't have to worry about that as much, but I still always like to do that. I knocked my pearl off. Make sure they're all on there good so they don't start flopping off like that. And there we go. We are all set. So if you have questions about Stampin' Up, about how to create this card or another card, I would love it if you would contact me and ask me those questions. I love to help anytime that I can. And if you have questions about ordering, you can go to judithpatterson.net. And there is a link there that you can click to shop my store. If you want to just buy the materials to make this card, then I will add all of those product links in the description, so that you can just click those and go straight to my store. And there's also going to be a link where you can comment in that description. So I always make a blog post to go along with these videos, so that you can see the measurements in writing and the instructions in writing, if that would make things easier for you. That's all I have for you today. I hope you're having a great day. Happy stamping. Bye-bye.